About 10 years ago, I was asked to prepare a proposal for a survey of a large vineyard in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. And this was a big chunk of land. It was hundreds of acres. And what happened is somebody had gone out, taken a big vineyard estate, and essentially carved it up into chunks. I don't know, maybe a dozen parcels. They were all 40 acres or more. And one of the parcels, the parcel in the middle, so kind of the donut hole parcel, was the original home site. And so the gentleman that owned this vineyard kind of carved out a parcel, donut hole parcel around his home site, and then subdivided the ring around that into these 40-acre parcels. And all the parcels were really irregular shaped. So there was no, they weren't laid out on any kind of grid. There weren't blocks in a traditional sense. So they're very irregular. And, in some places it looked like they were trying to follow a physical feature like the edge of a vineyard or a ditch or a road. But in other places, the lines were just kind of random. You could tell they were just trying to get 40-acre pieces cut out. And so what happened is this guy that got this subdivision done, it was a parcel map. He could do a parcel map in California because it was over 40-acre lots. So he gets this parcel map done, and then the remainder of the subdivision gets sold. And I believe it was one person that bought the ring around the donut hole. And on the edge of the donut hole was a pond, small pond. A large pond or small lake. And the farmer that bought the ring of vineyards around the home site and the owner of the home site, the original subdivider, got in a fight. They were fighting over who had access to that pond, which side of the property line the pond was on. And so we got called actually by the farmer to prepare a proposal to survey this property line and to monument these other parcels that he owned in the vineyard. And there was a real problem with that. And so I want to describe what the problem was and explain what that teaches us about surveying. So the problem was when this parcel map was done originally, they only found maybe 3 or 4 monuments on the outside of this several hundred-acre parcel. So it's not very much. And they didn't set any monuments. So they found 3 or 4 what we call record monuments, and they didn't set any new monuments on the perimeter. And they didn't monument any of the interior lot lines, none of the corners on the inside on the new parcels that were created. And you don't have to do that by law in California. And so the problem we had is it was going to be really, really hard to put any of these lines on the ground in an accurate way because there just wasn't enough monumentation. There just weren't enough monuments on the ground to be able to locate with confidence these lots. And because they were regular lots, some of the rules that surveyors can use to put subdivision parcels back on the ground were going to be hard to apply. So if you're watching this in your surveyor, it was going to be tough to do any kind of proportioning here. And so we went back to the client and explained to him, we've got a problem here. We don't even know how accurately we can put these lines on the ground. And this wasn't an old subdivision. It had been done in the last 20 years. And the farmer said, we explained to him why and showed him the map and showed him what happened. And he said he understood. And that he would try and work something out with the original subdivider that owned the homesite parcel. So what do we learn from this? Well, one of the first questions you have to ask is, why would anybody do that? Why would anybody create a subdivision that you can't put on the ground? And the answer is because it was a cheap survey. So he got a really good price. So, to actually set enough monuments to retrace that subdivision that they were creating probably would have doubled or maybe even tripled or quadrupled the price of the subdivision map. So you could put together a paper subdivision map fairly cheap, and that's what this guy did. Now he didn't realize that it was going to come back to bite him in a few years after he sold those parcels, but that's what it did. And now he's got a mess. See, now we don't even know if we can put those lines back on the ground accurately. So if you don't do it right the first time, it becomes really complicated. It's a big pile of horse manure. And so, one of the things that teaches us, first of all, teaches us sometimes a boundary survey or a subdivision with no monuments is worse than no survey than worse than no survey at all. And in this case, certainly the subdivision map made things more complicated, not simpler. And so one lesson is, most of the time when you're going to do a survey, you need to set monuments. And as a land surveyor, we always encourage our clients, if they're going to spend money on a survey, to have set monuments so that the survey can be retraced in the future. And so that's certainly important. And the other lesson here is, you can save some money. You can find a surveyor that'll cut corners and do your survey for half or a third. But that's going to come back to bite you. And maybe if you sell the property, you can get out of it and leave it as somebody else's problem. But there's never a guarantee that's going to happen. You never know when you're going to get a smart buyer that's going to sniff out the problem. And at some point, if you don't pay to get it surveyed correctly in the first place, you're going to at some point. So I tell people with surveys, you either pay now or you pay later. And anytime you pay later, it's always more expensive. And that was certainly the case here in this parcel map with no monuments, is what I called it. I wrote an article about it a few years ago. So, don't work with a surveyor that's going to cut corners like that. And when your surveyor tells you that you need to do something like set monuments so that your survey can be retraced in the future, you need to listen. That surveyor knows what they're talking about. She's telling you that for a reason, or he, and you should listen. And really, a survey without monuments in the ground and a good map on file with the county. If you don't have those two things, if you don't have monuments in the ground and a map filed with the county, your survey is losing a lot of its value as soon as your surveyor walks away. And so don't do that. You want to make sure you keep the value of your survey, and especially in situations where you're creating a new subdivision, you want to make sure those new lines can be retraced in the future.